everyone, my name is Pamela, I'm 27 years old, and this is my chemo story. So if you've been following me, I've been vlogging my whole experience with my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So if you didn't already know, I had ALK negative anaplastic large cell lymphoma, and it's really rare lymphoma, and it did require me to have a bone marrow stem cell transplant. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on that one because that's just a beast within itself. But this video, I'm going to talk about specifically my experience with my chemo that I had. And I'm going to read off the chemos I had. All together, I had 16 rounds of chemo. 6 of those were with my regular hematologist. Lymphoma is a blood cancer, if you didn't already know, so I had a hematologist and not an oncologist. And the rest of them on the list are the ones that I received in hospital when I had my transplant. So, fair warning, I'm going to butcher these, but Brentuximab, Adriamycin, or Doxorubicin is the other name for this one. It's called the Red Devil, and that's because of its red color that it has, and then also because it's one of the strongest chemos out there. Cytoxan, carmazine, etoposide, cytarabine, melphalan, and ifosfamide. So, like I said, those first 3 were the ones that I had in my regular 6 rounds with my hematologist, and those are the ones that I'm mainly going to be talking about today. And when I say I'm talking about them, I'm not talking about their like in a scientific way. I'm just talking about how they affected me. Chemo is different for everybody. It all depends on your age, your health history, things like that, how much of it you're getting, just all kinds of things go into that. So keep that in mind if you're watching this for yourself or for somebody else. I also never took any oral chemo pills. All of mine were infusions. So my infusions went through my chest port, which was right here. That's what this scar is. I had a right chest port. I actually had a pediatric one. So it was kind of small. It was like maybe this big, if that, and it stays under the skin. And then for my transplant, I had a really large bore central line. So over here is just a very small little hole that you can barely see. But like I said, today is about my chemo with my regular hematologist. So I'm going to start out. I had to make myself a list because I don't know how many takes I've done of this yet, but I have a list so that I don't forget anything. And I'm going to try to do this quickly because I know that people these days don't have a whole lot of patience. But so for a typical chemo day for me would start with, first of all, my chemo bag. I would pack my chemo bag. It had Jolly Ranchers, crackers, some kind of colored pens, something to color, my iPad, some headphones, and hand sanitizer. And that was my chemo bag. The Jolly Ranchers were mainly used for when I'd have flushes done. So a flush is when they take a saline flush syringe and they flush your port to make sure it still works, and they flush behind it to flush any medications or anything, whatever. But so I would have a flush before my labs. They'd flush it after they drew my labs. They would flush it before they hooked me up to anything. They would flush it between medications. They would flush it between the chemos, and then they would flush it when they were done for the day. So a lot of flushes, and I could always taste the saline with mine, so that's what the Jolly Ranchers were for, so that I didn't have to taste it as much. So that's a tip right there. If you have a port or you're going to get chemo infusions, like have some kind of like mints or something like that if the taste from that like makes you nauseous. After labs, I would go and see my doctor. So still the same waiting room, still the same area. But they'd wait for your labs to result, and then the doctor would review them, and then they'd have you come in talk to you, go over any. So for my first one, they told me what to expect, and then the next ones were more about how I was handling the chemo at home, like the side effects I was experiencing, if they were being managed with my medications, if something needed to change. But when they do your labs, they look at your blood count, they look at your kidneys, your liver, and your electrolytes. So make sure you're all good to go for chemo that day, because you can be considered too sick or not stable enough to get chemo. I never experienced that issue. I was always able to get my chemo on the days I was scheduled to get chemo. So if you saw my previous videos, I had cancer on this side and then kind of here in the middle. It was caught really early, and I don't want to go into detail all about that because I have a whole video just for that. But mine, I went into remission after only 4 rounds of chemo. So you ask, well, if you were in remission, why did you keep getting chemo? Well, I got 2 more rounds just to make sure, you know, there were no like little cancer cells hiding out that weren't big enough yet, or to show up on my PET scans, my PET CTs. So I had those, and then the other chemo I had was, like I said, for my transplant, with my transplant. So that has its own set of reasons that I will talk about later. But yes, so that is why I still had to get chemo even after I was in remission. I am still currently in remission. I have been cancer-free for 1 year this coming Sunday. So currently it's Thursday, February 18th of 2021, and Sunday, February 21st of 2021 will be my 1 year anniversary. So even though I've been cancer-free for a year, my last dose of chemo was 7 months ago in July, right before my transplant that I had that same month. So a lot of this I'm going to be pulling from my memory bank, but since, like I said a few minutes ago, this is like my I don't know how many number take. A lot of this I've been able to pull back up and remember. But just because trauma, I've pushed a lot of it back. So I'll go over like the major hit things for me. But yeah, so see the doctor, good to go, and then they move me to my chemo room. I know on movies and TVs sometimes you'll see like these big rooms that have these chairs along the wall and IV poles, like pumps, and patients all getting chemo. Where I went, the cancer center had that, but I was always put in a room for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's just because I had visitors with me, but so my first round of chemo was December of 2019, and so this was pre-COVID pandemic shutdowns and then limiting visitors and stuff like that. I was in remission before all of that, actually. So for my first 4 rounds at least, I had at least my mom with me for all of those, and then my boyfriend came to my very first one, and then maybe like one after that. And then I want to say my next 2 rounds I was by myself for those. But yeah, so I was in a room. In the room is just a chair, your IV pump and pole. There was like 2 extra chairs, and then a little counter space for the nurses to use for, you know, switching bags over and things like that. And then there was also a TV. And my show that I would always watch is Friends. It was always on every time I went. So I'd always look for the TBS channel that was playing it. So that became like my chemo show. I'd watch Friends while I get my chemo. But yeah, they go ahead, they sit you all up. Oh, but I need to go back to the labs portion. So to access your port, there's like this little needle that kind of has like a little crick at the end, and it's called a Huber needle. And that's how they access your port. They just kind of grab it, because the port's under your skin, if you didn't know. It's in your skin, it's surgically put in there and sealed off. So they access it, and that's how they're able to get your labs and then give you medications, fluids, things like that. Mine, out of the, I would say 6 times I had chemo, 4 of those times they'd kind of have trouble like getting into draw labs, but I would just have to, they'd recline me back, I'd have to lift this arm and then kind of turn, cough, and then eventually it would do what it was supposed to do. So I never had any real issues with my port. It hurt to be accessed, but it didn't hurt for, after a while, like I didn't notice it, I guess you could say. And then I've had people ask me, like, just having my port itself, like, did it hurt? Yes, not all the time, but if I bumped it in the middle of the night, like in my sleep, or I've bumped it, like when, I remember one time I was helping my boyfriend push, I don't know what I was doing, but I hit it on the boat somehow, and yeah, that hurt. So if I bumped it, yes, it did hurt. It hurt a lot. But for the most part, like, it didn't bother me any other time. But anyways, so that was how they did the labs and everything, and then they'd leave me hooked up for my next chemo nurse to come in and get me all started. So I'm in the room, and they hook me up to the fluids. They would run fluids just to keep my line open until they would get my chemo meds up from pharmacy. And I also, before I'd get any chemo, I would get a infusion of Zofran with a steroid. So Zofran, or Ondansetron, if you didn't know, is for nausea. It's to help prevent nausea, and it helps with nausea if you already have it. Another thing, since we're on the subject of nausea, it's one of those things you want to get in front of and not try to treat once you already have it. So for me, a big thing with my chemo was nausea. So I'd always take my, even if I wasn't feeling nauseous, like which was rare, I usually always was. Even if I wasn't, I'd go ahead and take something to prevent it, because it's always better to do that than to try to, once it's there, it's kind of there. But that's what that's for. And then the steroid was to help reduce any possible reaction that I could get from the chemo. So I'd get that first, and then they'd start my first chemo medication. And I want to say that one's the one that ran longest. I can't remember exactly how long it was though. And then I'd get the Doxorubicin or the Red Devil. So mine came in a syringe. That's not, I've heard people say that they usually got theirs in an infusion. I don't know why mine was that way. I don't, but that's how I got mine, and it was pushed slowly over 5 minutes. If it was pushed any faster, it causes, it can cause some pretty severe side effects. So, Doxorubicin does a lot of damage to your heart. So you do have to have some extensive, I say extensive, but I had to have like an echo done where they just looked at my heart, make sure everything's functioning, all the valves and everything like that. And then it does have long-term side effects, like even years from now, from having had it. So I remember I did once have this nurse who kind of pushed it just a little fast at one point, and when she did it, I could feel it in my chest, like kind of like a tightening feeling, like almost like a panic, like if your chest tightens when you're panicking or something. That's how it kind of felt, but just briefly, and then it went away. But yeah, that was my experience with that. And then my last medication was Cytoxan that they would hang. So Cytoxan, for me, I got, and I can't remember, I did look this up when I was getting it, but I don't remember the term that they used for it. But all in this area, my nose burned when I would get the Cytoxan. And then the way to fix that is just to slow down the infusion a little bit, and then it's fine. But I was always ready to go, so I didn't complain about it too much. I would just mention it. But yeah, I had that experience. And then I did have, some people asked me, does it hurt when you're getting chemo? Other than that I just told you about my nose and the Doxorubicin in my chest, no. I couldn't feel it infusing, like it's going in my port, but I couldn't feel it anywhere. So mine was, it didn't bother me. I would feel nauseous like throughout my chemo sessions, but I never actually got to the point where I threw up. I just didn't feel great. It was very draining. Immediately, I would try to take a nap on the way home just because I'm so tired, and it's a different kind of tired. It's like someone took your batteries out or something, or you just need a serious recharge. But yeah. And then also, when they take my Cytoxan, they go ahead and put my Neulasta on my arm, and I'm going to pull up a picture of that just to show what I'm talking about. This is the Neulasta injector, and it goes on the back of my arm, and they switch sides every time I go, but basically all it is this little pod thing you saw that sticks on the back of the arm, and it has lights on it that mean different things and to let you know when it's working, when it's done, things like that. But when she first puts it on, you'll hear like a beeping sound, and then it feels like someone pops you on the back of your arm with a rubber band. And I actually have a video of me getting it put on and when it pops me. That one's on my Facebook, which will be in the same album that I'm posting this video, so you can go back and look through all the stuff I'm talking about. But yeah, it doesn't really hurt, that's it. And the only reason for that is because it's a teeny tiny needle that punctures a hole in your skin so that a very thin, flexible catheter is left behind to deliver the medication 24 hours later, because you receive the Neulasta 24 hours after your last chemo. Neulasta is just a white blood cell booster. If you didn't already know, chemo attacks all the cells, all of them, including your white blood cells, and those are what you need to help fight off infections. So it kind of helps give them just a little boost, and that's the purpose of that. And it's after it's done, it'll beep 24 hours later to let you know it's going to deliver the medication, and then it delivers the medication, and then there's like a light that changes colors. I can't remember now what it looks like exactly, like the different colors, but it was just green or yellow, I think. And when it was, maybe even red, when it was done, then you could take it off and just throw it away. But that was it. After my very first chemo session, so I didn't feel, with all of my chemos, I didn't notice anything right away other than, like I said, that whole tired feeling and just a little bit nauseous feeling. But my major side effects would kick in maybe the next day or the day after for my chemo sessions, and mine were spread 3 weeks apart. I would get around every 3 weeks. I would start feeling good like 2 or 3 days right before I had to go back, so I'd feel like death and then feel just a little bit better. I don't mean by any means like myself right before I'd have to go through all of it again. But so yeah, after my first one, I remember I wanted to go to Dairy Queen, and I got chicken strips and french fries, ketchup, and then a hot fudge sundae. Well, the ketchup tasted completely off to me, and I have heard that people say that when they ate things, my mom told me, because she had breast cancer when I was little, and she said when she had spaghetti, the tomato sauce tasted metallic to her, and silverware had a metallic taste to it. So everyone has their own sensitivities when it comes to this. I didn't experience that personally. The ketchup didn't taste metallic, it just tasted absolutely disgusting. So I was not a fan of ketchup when I was getting chemo. Oh, and then the Doxorubicin. All of these medications are really harsh on the kidneys. When you first use the bathroom, after getting it, your urine is going to be a reddish orange color, and that's from the chemo, like I just said. I remember, so if you didn't already know from my past videos, I was an RN before, a registered nurse, before I got sick. So I had an idea, I had a medical understanding of what I was going to go through and how I needed to kind of protect my body from certain things and what the science behind like how this is going to affect my kidneys, but they recommend drinking 6 to 8 bottles of water a day minimum. For me, I've never been a fan of water, but I did drink Gatorades, Powerades, and Body Armors, or just really anything. Just as long as you're getting some fluids in, it doesn't matter what it is. It's better than no fluids. Just fluids, fluids, fluids. Flush out your kidneys, and the nurses will tell you, flush your kidneys. Like, that's where all the crappy feeling comes from, is that medication just hanging out in your body. But if you drink all that fluid and help flush it on out, you will feel better. And I know that. I can understand that. But for me, it was very difficult to actually do. It's one of those, like, I don't know, do as I say and not as I do things. But, yes, lots of fluids. I did notice that I did feel better-ish on the days whenever anything's better than not feeling better at all. So, but yeah, fluids. And then, let's see, hair loss. So that was another big one. My hair fell out after only just 1 round of chemo. I don't remember how long after I got the chemo that it actually fell out, but it literally was like an overnight thing. Like, I was just sitting on the couch watching TV with my boyfriend, and I just remember my scalp itching like crazy. And it was because, so some people say that when they lose their hair, their scalp would tingle or feel different. Mine never did that. It just itched because I had really thick hair. So when my hair was falling out, it wasn't just like falling out and going on the floor. It was like falling out and then staying in with the rest of my hair. So the ends would kind of like poke at my scalp, and so it kind of felt like if you lay on hay or in grass or something, that feeling. But yeah, I just remember like taking a hairbrush over, and I was standing over the trash can. It was just coming out clumps, and I was like, oh my God, this is driving me nuts. So I got in the shower, and I was trying to wash my hair. So I always kept a shower comb in the shower. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a really wide tooth comb that I would hang on the shower head and run through my hair when I used conditioner. Well, I couldn't even get the comb through my hair because clumps of hair were getting tangled up in the hair that was still attached. And I just had to like pull what I could out, and it was just clumps of it. And I was putting it on the seat that I had in my shower. And I knew that I was going to lose my hair. 2 of the chemos that I had, that was one of the side effects. But when it actually happens to you, I still had like a complete emotional breakdown over it. I remember turning off the shower and calling Tyler, that's my boyfriend, calling him in and telling him like, I can't do this. Like, I want it gone now. Like, so he immediately goes to the store and gets clippers, and then I did do a video on this where he shaves my head for me, but like in the video my hair is still damp because I couldn't wash. I couldn't finish my hair wash, and there's no way I was gonna be able to dry it. So, but yeah, I remember afterwards like not wanting to look in the mirror to like at myself, and how my head felt wet. I was like, why does my head still feel wet? And I was just like touching all over it, and he was like, because you don't have any hair, it's cold. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know, I've never not had hair. I was literally born with hair, so I've always had this thick curly hair. And but yeah, like, I remember my head was cold, and I didn't have the first beanie or chemo cap or anything because I don't know, I wasn't prepared, obviously. But yeah, I remember that feeling, my head being cold. So a lot of times at night when I would sleep, I'd sleep with either my chemo cap on or under the covers, just because like my ears would get cold or my hat would fall off or something like that. But yeah, that was, and I did have wigs. I had 3 wigs. I had a pink one, like a gray one, and than just like a natural colored one. But I only wore like each of them once, and then maybe like the gray and the pink one like 2 or 3 times. I just hated wearing them. They were uncomfortable. I was having hot flashes all throughout chemo because I'm going through menopause, which is another side effect from chemo. And I live in South Mississippi. It's humid. It's gross when it gets hot down here. So I rarely wore my wigs. And when I initially first had cut my hair, I was like, I didn't like to go without wearing my hat, even if it made me uncomfortable. But then after a while, I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, I'd rather be comfortable than uncomfortable because I'm already dealing with all these side effects. Like, why make myself more uncomfortable when I don't need to? So eventually, I was all about like not wearing my hat, and then I had all kinds of pictures of me not wearing my hat, just like, and that's when I would feel the best because I didn't have to worry about any of that. But that was the hair loss thing. Oh, and when you lose your hair in chemo, you lose it everywhere. So I'm talking about my nose, my eyebrows, my eyelashes, my legs, my arm, like no hair anywhere. So I saved hundreds of dollars in shaving products, that's for sure. But one thing about when you don't really think about your nose hair until you don't have it is like my nose would consistently run, and then I have 2 dogs, and one of them sheds really bad. So her hairs, if she was like on the couch or in the bed with me, would go like right up my nose. But yeah, it's just a weird feeling not having nose hair. Just the little things you don't notice. But yeah. And then there was this lady who was super nice on my Facebook who sent me a brow kit that had stencils, so I was able to stencil my eyebrows on. And she sent me magnetic lashes, which are the ones that have like the magnetic liner and then the magnets on the lashes. So I was able to have lashes and eyebrows sometimes when I wanted to. And I'm thankful for that because, as you can see, I've been girly girl, like to do my hair and my makeup. Not as much now, it's before I got sick. But yeah, so I missed doing that a lot. It was really therapeutic for me to just sit down and like do my hair, do my makeup, listen to music, but I missed it when it was gone. So that was super nice of her, and I'm very thankful for her doing that. But yeah, that's the hair loss portion of it. My mouth. So I did have to use this stuff. It's called Magic Mouthwash, but it's just basically a mix of different medications for your mouth. I got mouth sores, which is very common with chemo. It never got to my esophagus with my regular chemo. Now transplant, that's another story I'll tell you about. But just my regular chemo, just inside my mouth I lost like all my taste buds at one point, and I could only taste on the very back of my tongue, and even then it was only like if it was something spicy I was eating. But I would get like just a sore feeling like on my tongue, or maybe like a tiny ulcer here or there, and that's what the Magic Mouthwash was for. It had like Benadryl in it, a little bit of lidocaine for numbing. The Benadryl was for inflammation, and there was some other stuff in there. But yeah, if you're on chemo or you know someone that's having that, like bring up Magic Mouthwash with your doctor. It's like a lifesaver. Oh, and nystatin. It had nystatin in it, which is to prevent yeast or like thrush in your mouth. Because when you're on chemo, and they also had me on some antibiotics, and that can cause that thrush in your mouth. But yeah, so there was that. Speaking of pills, I had to take a steroid for the first 5 days after each round, and I can't remember the name of the steroid, but it was disgusting. It was very bitter. You could chase it as fast as you want, and you'd still get that bitter taste on your tongue. So very quickly, I went out and got some cinnamon applesauce, and I would take a spoonful of cinnamon applesauce, put my steroid pill in there, and just swallow the whole thing. And that's the only way I was able to take it. And that's how I took a lot of my meds. So as you can guess, I don't like applesauce now anymore from that. Weakness was a big thing that I experienced. I remember one time Tyler and I went to McDonald's and I got a fruit and yogurt parfait, and I wasn't really feeling it there, so I was like, well, I'll just bring it home and eat it at home. And McDonald's wasn't very far from where I lived. It was only like a 5-minute drive, and just getting in and out of the car at McDonald's, going back home, getting out of the car, and then going to my living room to sit on my couch, I was so tired, like drained. And I don't mean like just I need to sleep right now, just like it felt like my limbs weighed 500 pounds each, and I couldn't do the simple act of dipping my spoon in my yogurt and eating. And I remember just having a full breakdown over it because Tyler was having to sit there and spoon feed me yogurt. Just because I'm like, oh, I like not even a month ago I was taking like workout classes, and now I can't even feed myself yogurt. And that was a big thing for me, having to depend on other people. I've never been great at that, just because I don't, and it's not a pride thing, it's just I don't want to burden somebody. I don't want to feel like I'm burdening somebody, which I know that everybody who helped me is going to say that I was never a burden. And I believe that, but like I don't know. I tried to like not need help as much as I could, if that makes sense. I don't recommend that. I recommend you just full on letting people help you, because just let them help. But yeah, that I remember that I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, like I mentioned the anti-nausea medication. So if you're not nauseous, you're stopped up from taking all the nausea medication. So it's like this vicious cycle. And I just, like, my worst times were in the bathroom probably. I'd sit there and be like, oh, this is the most miserable thing I've ever had to deal with. Like, I know for one, I've never taken a single meal for granted that I was able to keep down. And I still don't take that for granted now, because I can, yeah. That was, I would say I spent the whole year 2020 nauseous, except for, I finally got over it after my transplant. I would say maybe like October or November, and my transplant was in July, and I was on chemo from December of 2019. So I was nauseous from then until towards the end of 2020. So once I was able to get to a point where I wasn't nauseous every single day, I'm grateful. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of my chemo with my regular chemo. Now my transplant is the worst thing, honestly, that I've ever gone through, and that's why I have to have a whole separate video for that one, because there's a lot more that I experienced with that one. But yeah, I had the most amazing support. Like I said, Tyler was there with me every day when he wasn't working. I had friends reaching out to me constantly. I had family. I had strangers I didn't know just supporting me. I actually, and this is not going to come to a shock to those of you who've had cancer, I actually did lose friends, and one of them permanently, related to just life change. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I did lose things like that. I lost my job from not being able to work. So in losing my job, I kind of have like lost my identity a little bit, I feel like, because like half of my time before I got sick was spent at work, and I went from doing that to doing, like, to just taking care of myself. I went from taking care of the rest of the world to just taking care of me, and it was quite a adjustment, and it still is, because I'm still not able to go back to work. And I guess I've called it like a quarter life crisis just because of the identity portion of it. Like I said, I'm a nurse, but I don't feel like I'm a nurse because I'm not practicing. I've missed the whole pandemic so far, which is still going on. So I don't know what it's like to work in that. And so it makes me feel like I'm kind of just out here floating around, and I don't have a whole purpose like I did before, other than I'm helping where I can, like sharing what I've been through. So it did take that from me. So obviously it took things financially, emotionally, physically, but I did gain things. Like, I've gained this whole new experience that not everybody, that hardly anybody is going to go through. So I have that, and then, so there's a whole story to share, and then there's a select few people who I can share that with that have been there. That was another hard thing for me too, because like I said, I'm in my late 20s. I don't know anybody that, like, I went to school with or anything like that who's had cancer, who can be like, you know what, I know what that feels like. Cancer at any age is tragic. Children, babies, elderly, it doesn't matter. But that particular time in my life was just really difficult for me, and I don't think I've ever felt more alone. And I don't say that to say that I didn't appreciate the people that were there for me. It's just that they can only understand to a certain point until it turns into but they can't understand it like how I understand it. So I've had to adjust to that. But other than that, I feel like I'm doing well. I have to fight mentally every day to hold myself together, but I think I'm doing well for all things considered. I've done this so many times, I didn't think I was going to get emotional, but I'm very thankful for everybody that was there for me, whether it was physically, whether you were there financially, whether you were there religiously, like just thinking about me in general. Even if you didn't tell me, I'm still thankful for you, because I know that I needed every ounce of the support that I did get. And that I still continue to get. People still checking on me, and it always is something that I will never take for granted. I'm just grateful, and I really wanted to bring that into this because cancer is something that you can't go through unless you have a strong support system of some kind. So I'm very grateful for all of you, and I'm even grateful for those of you who are just now joining me and hearing what I have to say, or just taking the time to watch this video, because I'm sure it's going to be a lengthy one. Sorry about that. But that's how I'm going to end off. My next video is going to be about my stem cell bone marrow transplant. But thanks for watching today, and I hope y'all have a great week.